Chapter 35-44. If I'm not wrong, these are just part of the test. And they are only testing me, the real master of Huang. Huang Fu-zun stared at her. The violence, coldness, and depth in his eyes faded away and were gradually replaced by admiration. Suddenly, he raised his hand, grabbed the hair on his forehead, and pulled it hard. The skin of his face was pulled off by him. What appeared in front of Mu Yen was a handsome face with long eyebrows and bright eyes. At this moment, it was not just the appearance that changed. It was the temperament of Huang Fu-zun. He turned from a fierce and violent man with a knife scar into a refined, elegant, and noble person in a superior position in an instant. Mu Yen glanced at Huang Fu-zun's hands. No wonder she felt strange before. Huang Fu-zun's hands were slender and neat, with calluses on the knuckles. They looked like a scholar's hands. But his face was like that of a criminal who would burn, kill, and loot. It turned out that it was not just an illusion, but also a disguise. After taking off the mask, Huang Fu-zun let out a long sigh. It was hard to tell whether the expression on his face was sad or happy. How long have I been waiting for this moment? 100 years, 1,000 years, or 10,000 years? I can't even remember. Huang Fu-zun murmured, my remnant soul is getting weaker and weaker. I really thought I couldn't wait for this day. I didn't expect that someone could break my great illusionary land. Huang Fu-zun said and chuckled. The way he looks at Mayan becomes more and more gentle and kind, like a benevolent old man looking at a junior that he has taken a fancy to. Girl, are you sure you want to take the young master away from the gate of heaven? Mu Yen smiled helplessly. Since Huang called me mom, I can't just watch it cry. Her stupid son wanted to be with her and didn't want to be separated from her. Then, they would stay together. Huang Fu-zun looked complicated. Do you know what the real identity of the young master is? What does it mean to keep it with you? Mu Yen shook her head. Senior, would you like to tell me? Huang Fu-zun curled his lips. It's not that I don't want to, but I can't tell you. What? Huang Fu-zun put a finger on his lips and said slowly, I can't say anything about the young master's secret. If anyone were to say it, it would be defying fate and betraying the Tao. Heaven and earth would not tolerate it. Mu Yen is simply dumbstruck. What the hell? Heaven and earth would not tolerate it. Where did her stupid son come from? Huang Fu-zun looked at Mu Yen quietly. His expression became more and more complicated. There was even a hint of pity in his eyes. Girl, you will regret taking the young master away from the gate of heaven. After a pause, he continued, if there really comes a day when you regret it, come and find me. If you can find me, I will bring you back to the gate of firmament. The more Mu Yen listened, the more confused she became. She probed, does senior mean that I've already passed the test and can take Huang away? Huang Fu-zun smirked. Girl, you wish. Of course it's not that simple. He swung his arms backwards, and his wide sleeves flew up along with the raindrops. But the raindrops didn't fall. Instead, they formed a whirlpool around him. Huang Fu-zun slightly spread his legs and put his hands in front and back, making a posture of invitation and attack. Chapter 35-45. Mayan is startled and quickly turns to look. Only then does she discover that without the shelter of the roof, the cold rain falls directly on them. Qin Jiao and the others, who were still in a coma, wake up and stand by her side. Little sister, are you all right? What's going on? Didn't we sleep in the house? What about the room? The rockery, the flowing water, the pavilions? Hey, my spiritual power seems to have recovered. Who is this handsome uncle? Listening to the vigorous questions of her fellow apprentices, another stone in Mayan's heart falls to the ground. It seems that Huang Fu-zun really didn't want to hurt them. June Mayan, how are you? Bastard, say something. Qi Huang's anxious voice comes to her ears. Mayan is delighted. Qi Huang, you're awake. No, it's not just Qi Huang who woke up. The connection between her and the Tian Mo Qin space has returned to normal. Mayan quickly sends the unconscious Xiao Bao into the space and anxiously says, Qi Huang, I don't have time to explain to you now. Look after Xiao Bao for me. Feed him one of the pills in this bottle every half an incense stick's worth of time. Hearing her voice, Qi Huang breathes a sigh of relief and smiles a little. But then he remembers everything that happened in Wushang Palace, and his face becomes gloomy again. His left hand clasps his right wrist, and his nails almost dig into the flesh. It was this hand that almost killed June Mayan. If he really killed June Mayan, Qi Huang suddenly closes his eyes, and his body trembles uncontrollably. Fortunately, that pretty boy came. Luo Yunxiao. What is the relationship between him and himself? While Qi Huang is thinking, Xiao Bao is sent in. Seeing the fainted baby with a fever, Qi Huang frowns and mutters in disgust, humans are fragile and troublesome. Even so, he still carefully carries Xiao Bao, takes the porcelain bottle, pours out the elixir, and sends it to Xiao Bao's mouth. Just then, Qi Huang's fingers touch Xiao Bao's forehead. His eyes can't help but slightly widen. This is not an ordinary injury or illness. It's the power of the boy's bloodline that has been activated. Qi Huang takes back the elixir and looks at Mu Yan, who is preparing to fight with Huang Fuzun outside. He frowns. Things are troublesome. Huang Fuzun glanced at the five of them and waved his hand casually. A lit incense stick was inserted into the grass at the side. The rain fell on the incense, but it could not extinguish the little sparks on it. One incense stick's worth of time. All of you, come at me together. Huang Fuzun said casually, as long as you can hold on until the end of the incense stick, you will be fine. I will open the gate of heaven for you personally. Mu Yan glanced at the four fellow apprentices and said in a deep voice, Is everyone ready? Ling Feather Mo waved the red lotus soul stealing blade in her hand, although I still don't understand what happened. But to determine the result of the test with a single fight is my favorite method. Sixth senior sister, we are ready. Mayan raises her hand, and the Tian Mo Qin spins a few times in the air, finally falling in front of her. His fair and slender fingers suddenly plucked the strings of the zither. The impassioned sound of the zither exploded in the curtain of rain. 5 silvery strands of energy shoot out from the Tian Mo Qin, submerging into the bodies of the 5 people. At almost the same time. Triple, power territory, activated. Triple, flame domain, activated. Triple, absolute space domain, activated. Triple, mirror domain, activated. Chapter 35-46. The violent and mixed energy swept through the entire grassland that was soaked by the rain in an instant. Huang Fuzun also widened his eyes in shock. Each of them has at least 3 realms, and they even have the rare, absolute space realm, and mirror realm. These little fellows really make me see them in a different light time and time again. Especially the little girl, June Mayan, young master's master. If he wasn't wrong. The Guqin and her realms came from the same place as the energy from the gate of heaven. Ling Yuma was the first to attack. The blood-red saber energy soared into the sky and turned into a blooming red lotus. The red lotus soul-stealing saber, which had been refined in the soul cultivation pool, shook violently. A series of complicated patterns appeared on the blade. Every pattern was shining with a dazzling red light. It was the first time that Ling Yuma used the upgraded red lotus soul-stealing saber to its full power. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Her spiritual essence began to surge as if it had its own consciousness. Naturally, a name appeared in his mind. Hellfire Soul Refinement. Boom! The hell-red lotus bloomed and fell on Huang Fuzun like a meteor shower. Huang Fuzun was a little surprised. Not only did you take the red lotus soul-stealing saber from the Wushang Palace, but you can also study the infinite fire spell. Before he finished his words, he had to retreat. Even he didn't dare to take the red lotus hellfire head-on. However, as soon as Huang Fuzun took one step back, the ground seemed to be alive, and 4 high walls rose up. Even under his feet, there were countless spikes of earth that shot out. Huang Fuzun flew up. Chirp! A crisp bird chirp resounded in the sky. The fiery red Bifong bird had flown above Huang Fuzun. The giant wings smashed down at Huang Fuzun with burning flames. Huang Fuzun's pupils constricted. It was the divine beast Bifong. At the critical moment, it was already too late for him to dodge. A transparent barrier immediately appeared around him. Boom! After a loud noise, the shield shattered. At the same time, the Bifong bird was pushed back dozens of meters. Huang Fuzun was about to take a breath. Suddenly, his heart shuddered. In the next moment, he saw a figure appear behind him without a sound. The threads of the silk of cloud were almost transparent. Unbeknownst to him, it had already wrapped around his limbs. Before he could even react, the thin steel needle flew towards his eyes. Absolute Space Territory, S third derivative skill, teleportation. Huang Fuzun's pupils constricted. Without any time to think, Zhang Xian unleashed all of his strength. The huge explosion caused the surrounding rain to almost turn into a rolling wave. Ling Yuxing was caught off guard and was almost hit head-on by the explosion. Fortunately, Mu Yan's divine hands weave the heavens landed at this moment. It barely blocked the impact, allowing Ling Yuxing to survive. However, Huang Fuzun, who had launched the explosion, was not so lucky. He wasn't injured at all. However, the clothes on his body had been torn by the strong impact just now. At this moment, it was loose and hung on his body in bits and pieces, revealing the white flesh underneath. Even his neatly combed hair was now half disheveled. He looked indescribably disheveled. Luo Yu giggled. Senior Huangfu, are you sure 30 minutes is enough? Chapter 35-47. Huang Fuzun has a bitter smile on his face. He really didn't expect that these kids, who don't seem to have a high cultivation base and are not that old. His strength had actually reached such a level. The key is that they are strong, and their means are so varied that he can't guard against them. With a thought, Huang Fuzun changed his clothes into new ones. He ties up his hair, glances at them, and finally falls on Mu Yan's face. 1,000 years ago, there was a school called the God Musicians on the Shushan continent. The assistant musicians from that school are called Shin musicians. It is said that the one who has a Shin musician is equivalent to having thousands of troops and horses, half of the world. Now it seems that the Shin musicians are really worthy of the title of the world's first assistant. These little guys are indeed talented. But their cultivation base is too low. No matter how many means they use, they can't hurt Huang Fuzun with only the most basic defense. On the contrary, no matter how much time they delay. As long as Huang Fuzun makes a move, he can easily take these people's lives. But when these 5 people get the help of the Shin musicians, it's different. The strength of the little guys more than doubles in an instant. It's better to fight against 1,000 people than to fight against one person. No wonder those people who mistakenly entered the pavilion of raindrops back then had such fear and dread towards the Shin musicians. Mu Yan feels a little strange when she hears Huang Fuzun's tone. Senior knows about the Shin musicians. I've heard a little. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. Don't all the cultivators in the world regard the Shin musicians as a world-destroying evil, and everyone has the right to punish them? World-destroying evil. Huang Fuzun chuckles, his expression indescribably contemptuous and disdainful. But people's schemes, little tricks that can't see the light, I've only heard of it as a joke. Should I really take it to heart? Huang Fuzun knows her identity as a Shin musician, but he doesn't feel afraid. It stands to reason that Mu Yan should be relieved. But she inexplicably feels very strange in her heart. Huang Fuzun's tone is really strange. When he mentions the people of the Shushan continent and the Shin musicians, his tone is too careless. It's like he's just a bystander, watching a group of actors perform, and then laughing at the intrigues on the stage. However, this thought was quickly thrown to the back of Mu Yan's mind. Because Huang Fuzun glanced at the incense that was about to burn out and smiled. Time is almost up. I'm going to get serious now. Are you guys ready? Mayan's gaze sinks, and her fingers quickly pluck on the Tian Mo Chin. Ling Yuma and the rest looked serious as they waited. However, the next moment, Huang Fuzun disappeared in front of everyone. Where is he? Mu Yan said sternly, everyone be careful, his strength has already far surpassed that of a profound immortal. In the Shushan continent, cultivators were divided into Hollow Immortal, Golden Immortal, Profound Immortal, Immortal King, Immortal Venerable, and Immortal Emperor. More than half of them were Hollow Immortals. Above Golden Immortals, they had to undergo tribulations before they could begin to form their immortal bones and become true immortals. The number of Golden Immortals was only half of that of Hollow Immortals. From the Profound Immortal stage onwards, only those who were truly qualified to obtain a place in the Shushan continent. As for the Immortal Kings, Immortal Primes, and Immortal Emperors, there were only a handful of them in the entire cultivation continent. However, Huang Fuzun chuckled when he heard that. Profound Immortal, Immortal King, Immortal Venerable. Hee hee. His voice came from the void. Chapter 35-48. No one could hear it clearly. He only said half of what he wanted to say and didn't continue. But from that laugh, one could tell how little Huang Fuzun cared about Shen Immortals, Immortal Kings, and Immortal Venerables. Little guys, try to see if you can take my 7 calamities dragon beheading spell. A dragon roar came from the void. Boundless pressure covered the sky and covered the earth as it came crashing down. The sound wall that Mu Yan used to cover the 5 people was shattered. Luo Yu, who had a low cultivation, spat out a mouthful of blood. She knelt on the ground. Then Ling Yuxing, Qin Zhou, and Len Yuma. Mu Yan's face was pale. She could no longer move her hands on the strings. Blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. Just as Huang Fuzun said. If he was serious, they wouldn't even be able to resist him for a single breath. Huang Fuzun's figure slowly gathered in front of Mu Yan. Looking at the stubborn little girl in front of him who didn't collapse, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile of admiration. You are indeed worthy of being chosen by the young master. Whether it is luck, talent, or willpower, you are all top-notch. But for your own good, I will let you fail today. He repeated what he said before, you will regret taking the young master away one day. Then he raised his hand slightly. However, at this moment, a beast roar that could shake people's souls came from behind. Huang Fuzun turned around in shock. He saw that the young man who had been pressed down by him had staggered to his feet. Behind him, the giant Baizé showed up. A pair of cold eyes were staring at him quietly. The red horn on its forehead was many times more solid than before, emitting a dazzling luster. Huang Fuzun was really surprised this time. Divine Beast Baizé. This is the real Baizé. You. He looked at Luo Yu with a complicated look. He was in a trance. I can't believe I saw the real Bai Zhe for the second time. In the sky, Bai Zhe roared and suddenly turned into a flowing light, rushing toward Huang Fuzun. Huang Fuzun was surprised, but he was not in a hurry. He crossed his hands and slowly separated them. A blue net appeared in the sky. Spirit returning secret seal, bind. The blue net grew infinitely larger as it was pulled, wrapping around Bai Zhe. The powerful Bai Zhe struggled violently, but was unable to escape. Huang Fuzun looked at Luo Yu with a faint smile. You are the descendant of that person, aren't you? It was rare to be able to summon Bai Zhe's true body. However, your cultivation is too low. If you had the strength of your ancestor, perhaps I would be slightly afraid. Upon hearing this, Luo Yu did not get angry. Instead, she curled her pale and cracked lips. Her dimples were faintly discernible, with a tinge of mischievousness and craftiness unique to youths. Of course I know Bai Zhe can't stop you, but my sixth senior sister can. Huang Fuzun was stunned. Suddenly realizing something, he turned around abruptly. 7 streaks of sword light whizzed over as fast as lightning. Huang Fuzun quickly raised his hand to block. His hand seemed to be made of flesh and blood, but he could even crush God King artifacts that everyone in the world fought over with his fingers. However, as soon as his fingers touched the blade, Huang Fuzun felt something was wrong. What sword was that? Swish! Blood spurted out from his palm. A sharp pain came from the depths of his soul. Huang Fuzun was injured for the first time since the battle started. His eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of disbelief. Chapter 35-49. After hurting him, the sword didn't advance recklessly. It floated around him and spun rapidly, forming an impenetrable sword net, trapping him in it. Of course, he could break the net. However, if he wanted to break through a sword that could injure him, it would definitely take some time. The incense stick on the grass had burned to the end. A smile finally appeared on Mu Yan's pale face. Senior Huangfu, thank you. She waved her hand, and the 7 supreme swords returned to her hand. The 7 swords became one again. With a slight movement of her divine consciousness, the long sword disappeared into her palm and was quietly stored in her sea of consciousness. Huang Fuzun looked at Mu Yan not with surprise and appreciation, but as if he was looking at a little monster. Is that your natal sword? How could a golden immortal's natal sword hurt me? He was puzzled. He was no longer careless about the little girl in front of him, whom he already admired. In his eyes, the creatures in the 3 realms and 6 paths were just ants. But who said that there wouldn't be variables among the ants? That there wouldn't be anomalies? Otherwise, how could the Wushang Palace appear in this world? Otherwise, why would the young master wake up in advance and insist on following this little girl? Mu Yan didn't explain the specialty of the 7 supreme swords. Instead, she bowed slightly and asked, Senior, have we passed the test? Can I take Huang away? Huang Fuzun was dazed for a while and then nodded. Of course. I'm willing to open the gate of heaven for you. After that, he closed his eyes, crossed his hands, and began to make one complicated seal after another. There were no less than 10 of these marks left behind. A quarter of an hour had passed. Mu Yan heard a loud bang, and the ground trembled. Then, a huge black gate towering into the sky appeared behind Huang Fuzun. Mu Yan looked up. There was a strange rune mark in the center of the gate. It was half on the left and half on the right. Even looking at it from a distance, she felt her soul tremble. She seemed to have seen this rune somewhere, but she didn't. As Huang Fuzun finished the last seal, the closed black gate slowly opened a gap. But from the outside, all that could be seen was a blurry white fog. Nothing else could be seen clearly. Go in. You can enter the gate of heaven and take away the rewards that belong to you. Huang Fuzun also turned around and looked at the giant gate with a complicated expression. He said in a low voice, "Don't worry. I'm the only gatekeeper. After you pass the test, you won't be in any danger. There are only rewards inside. But it could also be a disaster that you have buried for yourselves." But Huang Fuzun had said the same thing twice, so he didn't want to repeat it. While Mu Yan and the others were walking forward, Huang Fuzun suddenly said, "Wait." Mu Yan and the others stopped and looked over. Huang Fuzun put on a kind smile. "I've been guarding this gate for tens of thousands of years. I'm so tired of waiting. Thank you for freeing me. Why don't I give you a gift as a token of my thanks?" Everyone was startled. "Thank you." Huang Fuzun looked at Mu Yan and said, "Call the little guy with the immortal physique out as well. It's been a long time since I've seen a mortal body with such outstanding luck and talent, but..." His voice paused for a moment before he continued, "It is precisely because he is too outstanding that he has incurred the jealousy of the heavens." Chapter 35-50. Mu Yan hesitated for a moment. Seeing that Qi Huang didn't object, she took Xiao Bao out of the space. Huang Fuzun smiled, closed his eyes, and spread his hands. A moment later, 6 balls of light rose from his palms, slowly flew to Mu Yan and the others, and merged into their bodies. Boom! Mu Yan felt like her body was about to explode from some powerful energy. Her brain was roaring, and colorful fireworks were blooming in front of her. Xiao Bao, who was in her arms, was twitching violently, which made her anxious, but she couldn't control her body at all. A faint sense of regret rises in Mayan's heart. She shouldn't have trusted Huang Fuzun just because she didn't feel any malice from him. If something happened to Xiao Bao, this involuntary state lasted for half a cup of tea's time before Mu Yan slowly came to her senses. Then, she was shocked to find, I leveled up. I leveled up too. They looked at each other, and saw the shock in each other's eyes. On the floating island, golden immortals were divided into 5 realms. They were, Mysterious Life Realm, Mountain Opening Realm, Earth Opening Realm, Sea Splitting Realm, and Heaven Breaking Realm. Except for Luo Yu and Xiao Bao, who were still at the peak of the Mortal Cultivation Realm, the others had reached the Mysterious Life Realm. And now, Huang Fuzun gave them a gift. Not only did they leveled up, but they also jumped 2 realms at once. Mu Yan, Ling Yuma, Qin Zhou, and Ling Yuxing all broke through to the peak of the Earth Opening Realm. This realm, even on the floating island, was enough to make them proud. Even the patriarchs and ancestors of some small clans might not have as high a cultivation base as they were now. Xiao Bao and Luo Yu directly stepped into the early stages of the Earth Opening Realm from the Mortal Cultivation Realm or the Pseudo-Immortal Realm. The 5 of them were dumbfounded. They had never expected that Huang Fuzun would give them such an unimaginably heavy gift. Huang Fuzun looked at their expressions and laughed, "Don't be surprised. Giving you this little bit of cultivation doesn't affect me at all. And you?" His eyes fell on Mu Yan. "You are about to become the masters of the young master, and I have to give you this. Otherwise, if you were too weak, how would you have the qualifications to take the young master away?" From the beginning to the end, Huang Fuzun didn't tell Mu Yan to protect their young master. It was the same for the azure-clothed puppet. He was clearly so weak that anyone could crush him to death with a single finger. Why were these people not worried about their young master's men? Instead, he seemed to be more worried about the people who were going to become Huang's owners. Although she has 1,000 questions in her heart, Mayan is still filled with gratitude towards this mysterious and arrogant old man. She bowed deeply to Huang Fuzun. "Senior, we will remember your kindness." The other disciples of the Xiaoyao sect also bowed to express their gratitude. Huang Fuzun added, "I infuse the energy into your bodies by force to increase your cultivation level. If you want to truly absorb it and use it freely, you still need a long period of time and cultivation. I hope you can understand that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world." Mu Yan and the others repeatedly nodded. "Many thanks for Senior's teachings." Xiao Bao was still unconscious and having a fever. Mu Yan looked at him worriedly and sent him back into the space. Huang Fuzun waved at them. Go. Go. You still have a lot of things to worry about. Don't stay in this small world for long." Chapter 35-51. With that, his eyes became deep, and he slowly said, "If fate allows it, we will meet again in the future. If you are still alive to find out the young master's true identity, we will definitely meet again." Boom! The heaven's gates slowly closed in front of Huang Fuzun, and those figures also disappeared behind the gate. The smile on Huang Fuzun's face slowly disappeared, replaced by solemnity and majesty. He raised his hands, and his huge sleeves rose and fell in the drizzle, extremely elegant. In the drizzle, Huang Fuzun raised his hands high in the air, his body slightly leaning forward. A deep voice overflowed from his lips that were a little white from the rain, like a chant, or the most devout prayer. "Pure glass without waves, the vast golden spear leaves the dead, the fate of heaven, the knot of fate, thousands of lives, fate rises and falls. I only hope that the soul of Wushang will stay in the world forever, never dispersing and never extinguishing. The heaven's gate has opened, your mission has been completed. Pass down my order, permanently close Wushang Palace in this world. Permanently close Wushang Palace. Permanently close Wushang Palace." The deep voice reverberated under the curtain of rain like a sacred sonata, passing to Wushang Palace, and even to every corner of the Cave of Chaos. Xiuxian Continent, Linglong Island. Looking at the army of the polar domain surrounding the entire island, Yu Yanran only felt cold all over, and almost fainted. She knew that Di Mingju was cold and ruthless, and had no romantic feelings for her. But no matter what, she would never have thought that this man would actually be cruel to this extent. A whole 100 years. Her heart and eyes were filled with him. For him, she rejected all men's love and pleas. For him, she waited bitterly and foolishly. But what did she get in return? Tears of despair and sadness rolled down from her eyes. At this time, Yu Yanran's heart was filled with love and hate. She really wanted to shout at this man with a heart of stone, "How can you treat me like this?" Yu Yanran didn't speak, but Huang Shouchuan roared out the words in her heart. "Di Mingju, what are you doing? My Linglong Island has pledged allegiance to the polar domain since 1,000 years ago, and the young miss has a deep affection for you. She has never done anything to let you down. Back then, when the sky collapsing calamity happened, even though she knew how dangerous it was above the hidden abyss, young miss still led the 12 exquisite guards to help without hesitation. Is this how you repay her for treating you so well?" Di Mingju says indifferently, "Where is Li Weiran?" Huang Shouchuan's expression stiffened. He forced himself to remain calm and said, I don't understand what Juanshang is saying. There is no such person as Li Weiran on Linglong Island." Bang! A few guards and maids were thrown in front of Yu Yanran and Huang Shouchuan. Han Yi puts on a fake smile and says, "Tell me, is there a person named Li Weiran on Linglong Island?" The maids and guards trembled in fear. From time to time, he would glance at Huang Shouchuan and Yu Yanran. Just as Huang Shouchuan is about to speak, he hears Han Yi coldly say, in front of Di Jun, "Whoever dares to lie will be killed without mercy." Everyone below shuddered, and the fear and hesitation on their faces intensified. Suddenly, a young maid raised her head and cried out, "Yes, young Master Li Weiran has always been living in Linglong Island's Huaqin Palace. He calls the island Lord Jijie, and has a very high status on Linglong Island." "Slut, what nonsense are you spouting?" Huang Shouchuan's complexion greatly changed. He rushes over to give this little maid a slap. However, just as he swung his hand, Han Yi grabbed it. Chapter 35-52. Han Yi coldly looks at him, his eyes full of ridicule. "Deputy Island Master Huang, didn't you say that there's no such person as Li Weiran on Linglong Island? But this little girl doesn't seem to agree with what you've said. You're in such a hurry to act, are you planning to silence him? Go on." Han Yi looks at the little maid and says in a low voice, "As long as you're telling the truth, I guarantee that you'll live safely." The little maid is about to speak. She hears Yu Yanran choking. "Han Yu, Linglong Island has been good to you in the past, why did you deliberately frame me in front of Di Jun?" The little girl called Han Yu isn't ashamed when she hears this. Instead, her eyes burst with intense resentment. Tears flowed from her eyes. "Li Weiran is a demon. Why did you leave him on Linglong Island? How many corpses of our sisters were buried under the flower beds of Pure Flower's palace? Ling Xiang, Tsui Tsui, Shi Yu, one after another, they clearly didn't do anything wrong, but because of a small matter, they made that demon unhappy. Their lives were taken away, and they became fertilizer for the flower fields. I've reported these things to Deputy Island Master Huang." "But what about Deputy Island Master Huang?" "He just lightly said that Li Weiran was still useful to Miss, and let it go. Because we're just servants of Linglong Island, because we're useless to Miss, our lives can be casually sacrificed and trampled, is that right? Since you're in cahoots with the demon and don't treat us servants as people, why should I hide it for you?" Han Yu steps forward and kowtows to Di Mingju, crying as she says, "Di Jun, Li Weiran was brought back to Linglong Island by Miss 10 years ago. When he first arrived, his whole body was festering beyond recognition, and his body was filled with a terrible rancid smell. But later, I secretly saw Deputy Island Master Huang find many low-level hollow immortals and put them around Li Weiran. After one night, they all turned into dried corpses, but Li Weiran slowly recovered." At this point, Han Yu's whole body trembles, her eyes full of fear. That person has a handsome face like an elf, but a demonic soul. No. He's a devil himself. Emperor, please kill him and avenge my sisters." Sob. Listening to Han Yu's narration, Han Yi and the others have their complexions change. Sucking other people dry to heal his own injuries. What kind of strange and cruel evil technique was this? It's not like Han Yi and Ying Mei haven't seen Li Weiran by Mu Yan's side, that white-clothed youth with red silk over his eyes. From afar, it was a young man who was as pure as a crystal. They had never imagined that it would be such a terrifying demon. If such a person were to frequently appear by Miss Jun's side, wouldn't that mean that Miss Jun and Little Master would be in danger? Heavenly Yin Resurrection Curse. Di Mingju slowly spits out these 5 words. His face was cold, but his heart was not as calm. A supportive spell like that soul-chasing curse would not harm the harmony of the world. It wasn't like no one in the entire Shushan continent had mastered it. But the Tianyin Resurrection Curse was a high-level curse. Even he only heard it from Han Chujia's mouth. Li Weiran could actually use it. At the thought of such a dangerous person appearing at Mayan's side from time to time, it's as if a ball of fire burns in his heart. angry and restless. Chapter 35-53. His cold eyes fall on Yu Yan Ran. Where is Li Wei Ran? Yu Yan Ran's eyes are red, and she cries in a low voice, Di Jun, you believe the words of a slave. You won't even give me a chance to explain myself. In your heart, am I really that kind of cruel and vicious woman? She cries inconsolably, her frail body on the verge of collapse. At the side, Huang Shouchuan's heart is about to break as he watches. It should be said that as long as it's a man, they wouldn't be able to help but be shaken and soft-hearted after hearing such a grievous accusation. Even Tong Huanyan, who originally knew that Yu Yan Ran was infected with the curse, and had no good impression of her. At this moment, she can't help but reveal an unbearable expression. She looks at Di Mingju, Jun Shang, isn't there something wrong with this matter? I've watched Yan Ran Fairy grow up, she shouldn't have done such a thing. Perhaps she was framed by a villain. Huang Shouchuan supports Yu Yan Ran, and shouts angrily, I admit that the polar domain has great power, my Linglong Island can't afford to provoke you. If you want to kill, then kill. Why do you have to accuse our Miss of all kinds of crimes? Miss has always been kind-hearted since she was a child, how could she have done something like colluding with evil spirits? Di Mingju coldly watches their performance. Then he only asks one sentence, the person who sheltered Leng Yuexia and let her go to the Xiuzhen continent to hunt down Ben Jun's fiancé, was it you? Yu Yan Ran's tear-stained expression suddenly stiffens. Because she's too shocked, she can't hold back her aghast expression for a moment. When she comes back to her senses, she immediately realizes that things aren't good. Under the panic in her heart, the originally flawless acting naturally starts to have flaws. Di Jun, what are you saying? Why can't Yan Ran understand? Tian Yimen has long been exterminated, didn't Leng Yuexia die a long time ago? What does this have to do with my Linglong Island? Is someone trying to sow discord in front of you? As he speaks, Ing Mei has already walked to Di Mingju's side, throwing the things he just found on the ground. Seeing the things thrown on the ground, Yu Yan Ren only feels her vision go black. All the blood in his body rushed to his head, and all that was left in his ears was a buzzing sound. Ing Mei looked at this woman with disgust and said coldly, reporting to Jun Shang, these are some unique prescriptions and furnaces found on Linglong Island that belong to Tian Yimen, as well as the incantation shadow, taken from the soul-chasing curse. Han Yi promptly rushes over, grabbing Ing Mei's hand to take a look, his face full of worry. Jun Shang said that we can't be directly affected by the curse. Little Shadow, are you alright? Why didn't you call me when you found incantation shadow? Can't you just let me take it? Why are you touching this thing? Ing Mei laughed and pushed his head. Her expression was both helpless and sweet. What's the difference between you taking it or me taking it? Don't worry, I'm wearing the gloves given by the Medicine King. I'll be fine. Only then does Han Yi discover that Ing Mei is wearing a pair of translucent gloves that are as thin as a cicada's wings. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. When Yu Yan Ran saw incantation shadow, her face was ashen. She had clearly hidden that thing so well and had used a special formation to strengthen it. How could he have been found? Di Mingju expressionlessly picks up the incantation shadow and activates it. The scene of Leng Yuexia's death very quickly appears in the void. The corners of his lips hook up, and the gaze that looks at Yu Yan Ran is as cold as ice. Ben Jun will ask again, where is Li Wei Ran? Chapter 35-54. Haha, ha 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 ha, Yu Yan Ran suddenly laughs madly, you're asking where Li Wei Ran is? Of course, he's with your beloved woman, and it's hard for them to part. Di Mingju's eyes sink, coldly saying, abolish her and Huang Shouchuan's cultivation, lock them up, seal off Linglong Island, and strictly investigate everyone. Those who escape without permission, kill. Those found to be involved with the curse, kill. As you bid, Jun Shang. Di Mingju finishes speaking and turns to leave. Knowing that Li Weiran might be by Mayan's side, he can't stay a moment longer. Di Mingju, you can't go. You can't do this to me. Yu Yanran cries and pounces over, wanting to grab the hem of Di Mingju's clothes. However, before her fingers could touch the hem, Xing Lang, who has been dutifully guarding Di Mingju's side, kicks her away. Yu Yanran awkwardly climbs up from the ground, watching the man's resolute departing figure. Her beautiful face gradually distorts. Di Mingju, you will regret this. You turn a blind eye to the woman who loves you wholeheartedly, but you treat a used shoe that has long been trampled on as a treasure. Are you happy to raise another man's son? One day in the future, when that little bastard's own father comes knocking on your door, I'll see what you'll do then. Paw. Xing Lang ruthlessly kicks Yu Yanran's face, sending her flying several meters away. Her originally beautiful face is suddenly bruised and swollen, blood flowing out of her mouth and nose, looking exceptionally miserable and distressed. Xing Lang still doesn't feel relieved, fiercely glaring at the woman who dares to humiliate Jun Shang. Gnashing his teeth, he says, "Slut, if you dare say another word." Miss. Huang Shouchuan sees that Yu Yanran has been injured, his eyes almost splitting open. He frantically wants to rush over, but he's firmly held down. Yu Yanran raises her blood-covered face, laughing hoarsely, ha ha ha. Di Mingju, you've ruined my Linglong Island, ruined my 1,000 years of love for you. You'll receive retribution. Very soon, you'll taste the same as me. Betrayed by the woman you love, abandoned by the person you've carefully protected, Di Mingju, very soon, you'll taste despair. At that time, you'll know that you only have yourself to blame, ha 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 ha. Even if I die, I'll be in the underworld, listening to your painful and regretful cries. Aw. Yu Yanran's head is ruthlessly stepped on by Ying Mei, and she can only let out a cry. And right now, Di Mingju's expression is so cold that it seems like it can freeze everything in this world. No, not just coldness, but also ruthlessness, cruelty, and the desire to kill. Even Han Yi and the others, who have long known of Di Jun's terrifying strength, can't help but shiver when they meet such a gaze. He, Jun, Ing. He, I, the, Li, Yang. You, Li. Di Mingju's expression gradually returns to normal. Soon after, his figure flashes and he disappears from where he stood. Lord! Star Wolf anxiously shouted, how can Lord go down to the lower realms without using the universe mirror? It's all this woman's fault for talking nonsense. Before leaving, Xing Lang couldn't help but give Yu Yanran a ruthless kick. Han Yi coldly looks at Yu Yanran, Linglong Island Master, Deputy Island Master Huang, I'm going to abolish your cultivation now. I hope you'll forgive me. Yu Yanran's expression stiffens. Seeing Tong Huanian walking towards her, her eyes reveal fear. You don't want to listen to me, the sect leader. Then do you still dare to disobey my orders as Jun Shang's wet nurse? Han Yi and the others look at each other, finally bowing and saying, then we'll go out first. I request that Commander Tong do not act on your own and go against Lord's intentions. Otherwise, none of us will be able to bear the consequences. Watching Han Yi and the others leave, only Tong Huanian, Yu Yanran, and the already semi-conscious Huang Shouchuan are left in the room. Tong Huanian says in a low voice, tell me, how are you going to deal with Jun Mayan? How are you going to make Jun Shang change his mind? Tell me clearly, and I can spare your life. If you don't, Huang Shouchuan's end will be your end. Chapter 35-56. In the desert of the chaotic heaven cave abode. Li Weiran casually picked up some sand and sprinkled it on his exposed arm. On the white bones, there was still fresh flesh that had not completely corroded. Once the sand fell on it, it stuck to the flesh. It even drilled into the sore on his upper arm. Just looking at it made one feel a piercing pain. However, Li Weiran did not seem to feel any pain at all. His face was filled with boredom, and from time to time, he would look at the glazed roof that had already been submerged in yellow sand. And it was at this time that an old and heavy voice spread throughout the chaotic heaven cave abode. Permanently close the Wushang Palace in this world. As the command rang out, the entire chaotic heaven cave abode began to shake violently. Everything around it gradually began to dissipate like an illusion. Ah! Li Weiran stood up, revealing a surprised expression. Wushang Palace was not unfamiliar in the Shushan continent. In some remote ancient ruins, there would occasionally be cultivators who mistakenly entered. In Wushang Palace, they would encounter dangers and tests. But these were usually not fatal. Once they passed the test, they would receive a great gift. It was just that these people usually had vague memories of their experiences in Wushang Palace. They could not tell what they had seen or experienced inside. And Wushang Palace was not a place that anyone could enter. Only those who were recognized by Wushang Palace had the opportunity to take the test. But Li Weiran had never heard that Wushang Palace would choose to permanently close after the test. Did the little guy do something? Or, just as he was thinking, the entire chaotic heaven cave abode finally completely collapsed and disappeared. Li Weiran only felt that the originally hot air had instantly become cool and comfortable. The tip of his nose also smelled the strong fragrance of flowers. This was the nine-tailed dragon sunflower flower field. What's going on? Why am I here? I was just being chased by a crocodile and thought I was going to die. How did I suddenly return to the flower field? I'm out of chaotic heaven cave abode. I'm saved, I'm really saved, ha 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 ha. Noises rose and fell in succession from the surroundings. These were all people who had been accidentally sucked into the chaotic heaven cave abode, but had persevered until now. Some of them were not drawn into this flower field. He had been trapped in the chaotic heaven cave for a year or two, or even longer. He almost thought that he would never be able to get out and could only die in this hell while trembling with fear. Who would have thought that they would have the chance to return to the floating island and be reborn? Many people wept tears of joy. There were also people who immediately took out communication magic treasures to inform their close friends and family that they were still alive. The originally empty, nine-tailed dragon sunflower field suddenly became very lively. But from the beginning to the end, everyone was confused as to how they got out. In an inconspicuous corner of the flower field. With a flash of light, a few figures appeared in the flower shrubs. Li Weiran's eyes flashed and he quickly walked over. The little chick was still in a daze. He staggered around, looking at everything around him. What was going on? What was going on? It was still waiting for its mother in the aisle. How did he arrive at this flower field in the blink of an eye? Where's Mom? Where's my brother? Where are the uncles? When it was done, the little chick's round eyes suddenly widened. Chapter 35-57. Little Inghua stared at the people in front of him, and tears welled up in his big eyes. Gijiji. Mom. The little yellow ball plunged into Mu Yan's arms and rubbed against her desperately. Whoa. Mom, Mom, Mom. It was such a small ball, but Mu Yan fell down from the impact. Looking at its crying appearance, she couldn't help but feel funny. She gently touched its head. Okay, don't cry. You're already an adult, chicken. You have to learn to be independent and brave. Little Inghua lifted its head, and its little body twitched as it tried to hold back its tears. Gijiji. Gijiji. I thought Mom didn't want me anymore. Mu Yen flicked its little head. You're my stupid son. If I don't want you, what if someone stews you? Mom really thinks I'm her good son. Little Inghua grunted in satisfaction, and then rubbed against Mu Yan's fingers. After rubbing, little Inghua looked around but didn't see Xiao Bao. It couldn't help but cry, Gijiji. Mom, where's brother? Mu Yan's face darkened at the mention of Xiao Bao, and worry appeared in her eyes. Xiao Bao was still in a coma due to fever. She asked Qi Huang what happened, but he didn't say anything. Now, she had to find a place to settle down and treat Xiao Bao. But eldest senior brother, junior sister, I'll go to the Lawn Empire's palace to investigate. You guys go back to Liberty City first, Ling Yuxing suddenly said. Luo Yu said, fifth senior brother, I'll go with you. She was really worried about the eldest senior brother's safety. Ling Yuxing shook his head. With my speed and absolute space field, I'm afraid I can't save eldest senior brother. But it's easy for me to escape alone. If you guys go, I won't be able to get away, especially you, little 7. Leng Yuma nodded. Little 5 is right. Little 7, you're wanted by the state preceptor. If you go to the Lawn Empire's palace now, won't you be walking into a trap? Luo Yu lowered his head listlessly. Ling Yuxing touched his head and said softly, don't worry, eldest senior brother's soul lamp is still lit. He has a powerful half-demon body now, so he'll be fine. I will definitely find out about eldest senior brother. Luo Yu forced a smile and nodded. Mu Yen fished out a large pile of talismans, elixirs, and arrayed discs for Ling Yuxing. Fifth senior brother, you must also be careful. I've met the I Ching Feng before. I think his strength has even surpassed the golden immortal realm. You can't let your guard down. Ling Yuxing nodded before turning around and leaving. The others also stepped on the colorful cloud carpet and flew to Liberty City. Mu Yan had once obtained a rainbow cloud carpet as a reward in the Tianguang ruins of the Shuzhen continent. But in the final battle, the rainbow cloud carpet had been damaged. This one was new. She had just taken it out from floating light islands of Vichy Tower. The flying speed of the rainbow cloud carpet was extremely fast, almost 10,000 miles a day. Therefore, they soon returned to Liberty City. Xiao Bao, Xiao Bao. Touching his scalding skin and seeing his pained expression, Mayan is startled. How could this be? Qi Huang, what happened to Lil Bao? 7 Brilliance was silent for a while before he said, his bloodline power has awakened. Chapter 35-58. Qi Huang frowns, somewhat unhappy. Didn't I say it before? Xiao Bao's biological father should be the inheritor of some special bloodline. This bloodline is very troublesome. When Xiao Bao's strength grows to a certain level, not only will there be empathy between his flesh and blood, but the talented ones will also awaken the bloodline. Once awakened, there are only 2 outcomes. If he survives, his strength will advance by leaps and bounds. If he doesn't, only death awaits. Mu Yen, what? Her breathing suddenly quickens, and she grits her teeth. How can I help Xiao Bao survive? How would I know? Qi Huang spreads his hands. If I knew, I would have helped him awaken successfully. Mu Yen clenches her hands into fists, and her knuckles make a cracking sound. If Xiao Bao's biological father is here at this moment, she would definitely tear him to pieces. No one in this world can hurt Xiao Bao, no one can take Xiao Bao from her hands. No one. Seeing Mu Yan's figure suddenly appear in the space, Qi Huang is startled. What are you going to do? Ow! Jun Mu Yan, what are you doing? Qi Huang lets out a low cry, but he has already been grabbed by the collar. Like carrying a sack, he is carried into the book pagoda. Mu Yan says, didn't you say that this is just a special bloodline? There are all kinds of ancient books in Tian Mo Qin's book pagoda, and there may be records about this bloodline. Qi Huang's face changes. I won't. Now that your cultivation is enough, you can find the books yourself. Before he can finish, he sees Mu Yan's cold eyes sweep over, in Wushang Palace, who wanted to strangle me. Qi Huang's expression stagnates, and after a long while, he unwillingly says, Find. Do you think this sage is afraid of you? This sage just doesn't want to see the little guy be defeated by a mere bloodline. Chio, Bai Xia, Fat Rabbit, look after Xiao Bao for me. If anyone enters the room, inform me immediately. Because Qi Huang said that Xiao Bao needs to absorb the world's vitality to resist the erosion of the bloodline, Mu Yan is left outside the space. Although the room has been surrounded by layers of arrays, Qin Jiu and Leng Yuma are guarding the room. But Mu Yan is still worried. The three little guys listen and nod, and simply run out of the space to guard Xiao Bao. They wouldn't let anyone hurt their little master. The fat rabbit moved closer to Xiao Bao, licked his burning red face, and made a whining sound. Little master, you must get well soon. After a quarter of an hour, a crisp and tender voice comes from the book pagoda in the Tian Mo Qin space. Damn, I finally found it. Mu Yan quickly turns her head to look. On the opposite bookshelf, there was a little doll dressed in a red dudu. He was holding an ancient book that was about the same size as the others, and he had a relieved expression on his face. Mayan reaches out and hugs the book, bringing it back to the ground. The baby wriggles in her arms. Jun Mayan, what are you doing? Let me tell you, men and women should not touch each other. I will not be responsible for you. Piak. A slap landed on its chubby little butt. Stop fooling around. Little Qi Huang's body stiffened, and her round face instantly turned red. No one knew if it was because of embarrassment or anger. Jun Mayan, I'm warning you, this deity is an ancient artifact spirit. You dare to treat me like this. A hand gently pressed against his head. Mu Yan looks at him attentively and gratefully. Chapter 35-59. Qi Huang, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Qi Huang's voice came to an abrupt halt. The blush on her face gradually spread to her ears. Her long eyelashes drooped, hiding the panic and joy in her eyes. Then, for once, the Lord Artifact Spirit didn't make a fuss. Instead, he sat quietly by Mu Yan's side. Just like that, he quietly watched as the young girl flipped through the ancient book page by page, reading back and forth, comparing it to Xiaobao's situation. Unbeknownst to him, the little toddler had already turned into a flirtatious young man in a red robe. But his brows were still so warm and soft, and he focused on the girl beside him without blinking. It was as if the person in front of him was his entire world. Li Fire Bloodline. His slender fingers lightly brushed across a few words in the ancient book. The language used in this ancient book was not the common language of the cultivation continent and the floating islands. On the contrary, in the Yenwu continent, there are some remote tribes that still have records of this kind of writing. Back then, Mu Yan happened to know a little about it. In addition, although Qi Huang could not read words, he could resonate with the feelings of the author. Therefore, after stumbling for a while, Mu Yan finally understood most of the contents of the ancient book. Among them, the one that caught her attention the most was a special and rare bloodline that had been passed down from ancient times, the fire bloodline. Those who inherited the leaf fire bloodline would usually decide their life before they stepped into the golden immortal realm. If one's talent was awe-inspiring, their bloodline would be activated and they would enter an awakened state. The awakening was divided into 3 stages, each more dangerous than the last. However, if he could successfully awaken it, he would be able to form his godhood. Only a cultivator with a godhead can cultivate divine power. Ordinary people might not be able to cultivate divine power in their entire lives. Han Yi and Ing Mei are strong enough, right? However, he could only use celestial power, not divine power. Those who possess the leaf fire bloodline would be able to cultivate Shen power after 3 successful awakenings. This is even more heaven-defying than Mu Yan's Shen musician's skill of combining the 3 powers into divine power. But was it that easy to awaken? 90% of those who inherited the leaf fire bloodline were stuck at the bloodline activation stage. They weren't talented enough, so they couldn't even reach the threshold for bloodline awakening. Therefore, after reaching adulthood, they would begin to sink into mediocrity, and their strength would even degenerate until they were even inferior to mortals. If he was lucky and activated his bloodline, would that be considered luck? No. That was the beginning of an even bigger nightmare. Every awakening was a torturous experience. Unless there was an elder who had also awakened the leaf fire bloodline guarding them, there was no way to increase their chances of surviving. Mu Yan's hands are tightly clenched into fists. She bit her lower lip so hard that it almost broke, but she didn't feel it at all. He needed a senior who also had the leaf fire bloodline to guard him. But she didn't even know who Xiaobao's biological father was. How was he going to find an elder who had activated the bloodline? Jun Mayan, don't be sad. Qi Huang was at a loss. He wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know what to say. Isn't it just the leaf fire bloodline? Even if there was no one to protect him, Xiaobao would definitely be able to survive. He's your son, Jun Mayan. Although her words have always been tsundere, looking down on Mayan. However, Qi Huang knew just how powerful and amazing the girl before him was. What was the polar domain Empyrean Lord? He's barely worthy of Mayan, that's all. So what if he had the leaf fire bloodline? Chapter 3560. Since ancient times, Mu Yan was the only human whom he, Qi Huang, was willing to be loyal to and fearless of death. Mu Yan took a deep breath and forced a smile. I'll go accompany Xiaobao. Before this, she had never thought of looking for Xiaobao's biological father. To her, he was just a stranger who brought her fear and pain, but had nothing to do with her. But now, the leaf fire bloodline had to be awakened 3 times. Even if she survived the first time, what about the second and third time? However, in the vast sea of people, she didn't even know what that man looked like. How could she find him? As soon as she got out of the space, Mu Yan was shocked. Her eyes stared at the figure sitting by the bed and she said sternly, Li Weiran, why are you here? A young man dressed in white sat by the bed. It was just that the originally spotless white silk robe was now in tatters and filth everywhere. This was especially true for his left hand. Not only was his sleeve gone, but the flesh on his entire arm was also almost completely corroded, revealing the eerie white bones inside. At this time, Li Weiran was pressing the white-boned claw on Xiaobao's face. That scene was really unspeakably terrifying and strange. The 3 little ones who were guarding Xiaobao were all unconscious. Even the evil warding sword was only slightly vibrating, but it didn't make any sound. The formation outside the room didn't even have the slightest reaction. Hearing Mu Yan's voice, Li Weiran slowly turned around, revealing a slightly wronged expression. Mu Yan, I followed you all the way from the nine-tailed dragon sunflower flower field to Liberty City. Didn't you see me at all? Mu Yan walked to Xiao Bao's side with a calm face and took him from the bed into her arms. She clasped his delicate wrist to check. This pulse diagnosis made Mu Yan's expression change slightly. She suddenly looked up at Li Weiran. What did you do to Xiao Bao? Li Weiran said in a daze, I didn't have time to do anything. So you really plan to do something to my son? Mu Yan's gaze was like a sharp blade for a moment. But then there was suspicion in her eyes. Qi Huang, can you sense Xiao Bao's situation? Qi Huang frowned, his expression gradually becoming confused. The bloodline awakening's corrosion on the little guy has weakened. Yes. Mu Yan was puzzled because she had just detected that Xiao Bao's condition had unexpectedly improved. But why? She hadn't done anything. Is it because Xiao Bao survived the bloodline awakening? Mu Yan asked with a trace of expectation. However, what he got was the expected negative answer from Seven Brilliants. It was obvious that it was impossible. In that ancient book, it was recorded that every time the Leaf Fire bloodline awakened, regardless of whether it was successful or not, and regardless of whether there was someone protecting it, it would last for at least 3 days. Not even a day had passed, so how could Xiao Bao be safe and sound? So, what exactly happened before? Mu Yan raised her head and looked at Li Weiran suspiciously. Li Weiran immediately raised both his hands, his face innocent. I really didn't do anything. I even saved the little fellow several times in the chaotic heaven cave abode. Mu Yan, you can't wrong me. Saying that, he also handed his left hand that was only left with eerily white bones in front of Mu Yan. He said pitifully, you see, in order to save this kid, I suffered such a heavy injury. Mu Yan, aren't you going to treat me? Mayan frowned at him and said coldly, Li Weiran, what are you trying to do? What do you want from me? Chapter 3561. Li Weiran's icy blue eyes are bottomless, his lips slowly hooking up into a smile. Mu Yan, what do you think? What can you give me? Mu Yan, that depends on where you come from. I come from Linglong Island. The smile on Li Weiran's face deepens. Mu Yan, do you know what kind of place Linglong Island is? The owner of the island is called Yu Yanran. I heard that in the eyes of the people of Shushan continent, the Emperor of Polar Domain and Yanran Ferry are a match made in heaven. Mu Yan's eyes deepen. So, this Yanran Ferry deliberately let you approach me? What's the purpose? Why are you telling me now? Li Weiran stands up, casually replying as he walks out, who knows? Maybe I planned to kill you at first, but now I have something else I want. At first, I wanted your life. But now, I want you as a person. In this life, Di Mingju and Polar Domain owe me too many things. Now, I don't want anything, I just want Di Mingju to repay me with his most beloved woman. As Li Weiran walks, he carefully takes out a jade box. The jade box opens automatically, revealing a crystal clear, gently swaying dark cloud's spirit flower. The moment he sees the dark cloud's spirit flower, the mask on Li Weiran's face disappears, revealing a trace of indescribable gentleness. In this world, there should always be something that belongs to him, Li Weiran. When his uninjured right hand touches the door, melodious music comes from behind. A pure energy is poured into Li Weiran's body through the sound of the zither. He is slightly startled and can't help but turn around. The Tian Mo Qin is already in Mu Yan's hands. The slightly pale girl is expressionlessly fiddling with the strings. When Li Weiran looks over, she says lightly, your hand was injured to save Xiao Bao, I should heal it for you. After a pause, she sincerely says, thank you for saving Xiao Bao. The corner of Li Weiran's mouth slowly hooks up. The gentleness on his face doesn't fade, but it carries a trace of cherishing and childishness. The treatment lasts for an entire hour. Because Li Weiran's hand is completely corroded, skin and flesh. To heal him, it is equivalent to a real, flesh and bones. Even though Mayan's, art essence yellow, had already risen to 3 stars, it was still extremely strenuous. If anyone from the sky-floating island or the Shushan continent were to witness this scene, they would be dumbfounded. The sound of the zither gradually stopped. Mayan's complexion is already as white as rice paper. The spiritual power in his body was almost completely consumed, and there was a burning pain in his dantian. But she gritted her teeth and persevered. Because this was what she owed Li Weiran, and she had to pay him back. Li Weiran looked at his recovered arm and then at the dark cloud spirit flower in his arms, which was swaying happily due to the music. His icy blue eyes sparkled brightly. He took a step forward and took the initiative to be friendly. What's wrong with the little guy? Was he injured in the chaotic heaven cave abode? What spirit herbs do you need? I'll go pick them for you, okay? Mu Yen slowly exhales and is about to answer. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept across. The door was smashed into pieces. Like the pressure of Mdtai, mixed with stormy waves of killing intent, pervaded the entire room. Li Weiran's expression changed slightly, and he was about to step back. A hand suddenly clasped his neck and ruthlessly slammed him against the wall. There was a loud bang, and cracks appeared on the solid wall. The faintly discernible ice blue and scarlet gradually reflected her figure. Mayan. A low and hoarse voice spills out from between his lips and teeth, like a call that has been waiting for 1,000 years. The collapse of the surrounding space disappeared. The faint sound of thunder outside the house gradually faded away. Mayan lets out a long sigh of relief, her slightly cold fingertips caressing his face. She says softly, Di Mingju, what happened? Did Li Weiran say something to you? Di Mingju suddenly reaches out and clasps her waist, fiercely pulling her into his embrace. Tightly hugging her. So tight that it's like he's itching to rub her into his own flesh and blood. Mayan can almost hear the sound of her bones being squeezed. Chapter 3563. The extremely tight embrace makes Mayan almost unable to breathe. But she can feel the uneasiness of the man next to her. So she doesn't show the slightest difference, instead, she reaches out and hugs him. Di Mingju, no matter what Li Weiran says, don't pay attention to him. This person's mind is treacherous. Yen Yen. The man's husky voice interrupts Mayan's words, you'll never leave me. Mayan stares blankly, then reveals a helpless and doting smile, yes, I'll never leave you. If Xiao Bao's biological father comes looking for you, you won't choose him. Mayan frowns. What's going on? How come that bastard man has come out recently to make his presence known? Qi Huang has repeatedly mentioned Xiao Bao's leaf fire bloodline. How come even Di Mingju is entangled now? Don't say that she doesn't even know who that bastard man is. Even if she knows who he is, wouldn't it be too late to kill him? What do you mean choose him? In your dreams. Mayan sighs softly, breaks free from Di Mingju's embrace, and is about to speak. But he firmly presses her into his arms again. The man's voice is hoarse and dark. For the first time, there's no gentleness and doting, only fierce jealousy and murderous intent. Yen Yen, no matter what, I won't let you leave. From the moment you agreed to be my wife, you belong to me. Only to me. Mayan stares blankly, and is about to speak. But she feels her body loosen, and Di Mingju has already disappeared. Di Mingju. The room is empty. There's no sign of Di Mingju. Mayan's heart surges with an inexplicable sense of loss and fear. What happened just now? Or, what did Li Weiran say to Di Mingju that caused the always calm man to lose control like this? No, she can't leave Di Mingju like this. Mayan is about to use the Void Spirit Ring to find Di Mingju. Suddenly, Nyangqin. Daddy, a low, weak and pained voice comes from the bed. Mayan is startled, and quickly goes to the bed. She carefully picks up Xiaobao. In just a short moment, Xiaobao's little face is flushed red again. The most alarming thing is that there's a faint black aura around his temples and eyebrows. Qihuang, what's going on? Seven Brilliance, who was in the space, was also confused. I'm not sure either. There were clearly signs of improvement just now. Xiaobao opens his eyes in a daze and sees Mu Yan. His blurred eyes burst with a bright light. Mother, little treasure, be good. Mother is here. Xiaobao's head moved with difficulty as he looked around. When he didn't see the familiar figure, his ice blue eyes revealed a trace of disappointment. With a slightly hoarse and tender voice, he said, I heard Daddy's voice just now. So. I heard wrong, Mu Yan promptly said. Xiaobao didn't hear wrongly. Daddy came, but he had to leave first. Little Treasure's eyes lit up, but then they couldn't help but dim. His lips, which had been burned dry and cracked, were slightly pursed. A trace of disappointment and grievance appeared on her face. Daddy was here. Why didn't he hug him? He was sick and in so much pain, but his father didn't even look at him and left. Did his father really not want him anymore? Xiaobao blinked and tried his best to hold it in. Chapter 35-64. At this moment, her body was in so much pain that she could no longer hold back her tears and they fell from the corner of her eyes. Mother, does father not want Xiaobao anymore? Mu Yan sees him shedding tears of sadness, and only feels her heart throbbing with pain. She carefully wiped away the tears at the corners of Xiaobao's eyes and said softly, Silly, Daddy loves Xiaobao so much, how could he not want you? Xiaobao tilts his body slightly and buries his face in Mayan's arms. His small body trembled slightly because of the pain. Seeing this, Mayan felt an indescribable heartache. She only wished that she could bear these sufferings for him. However, what pained him even more was what Xiaobao said next. I dreamt that Daddy doesn't want me anymore. He said that Xiaobao isn't his flesh and blood, and told Xiaobao to leave with his biological father. There are also many people who say that little Bao is not Daddy's child, so how can he stay in the polar domain? They said that Daddy will have his own flesh and blood in the future. If little treasure stayed in the polar domain, he would only be a disgrace to Daddy. Xiaobao raises his head and looks at Mu Yan. His flushed little face is already covered in tears. Why do they all say that Xiaobao can't stay in the polar domain and can't stay with Daddy and Mommy? Just because Xiaobao isn't Daddy's flesh and blood. Mother, why does Xiaobao have a biological father? Xiaobao doesn't want to go with him. Xiaobao only wants Daddy and Mommy. The child could no longer hold back his sobs, and a sob escaped from his mouth. Xiaobao had always matured early. Other children might not understand, but Xiaobao could understand since he was very young. When he was sent to the polar domain, others always treat him as Di Mingju's own son. They looked at him with admiration, gratification, and reverence. However, what if these people knew that he was not his father's flesh and blood? Would they still be this happy? Would they think that he was the dove occupying the magpie's nest and that he had no right to stay by his father's side? Xiaobao knew of these fears and grievances, but he had always buried them deep in his heart. He doesn't want Mayan to feel sad, and he also doesn't want Di Mingju to be angry. But at this moment, his willpower was weakened by his illness. The sadness, fear, and grievances finally erupted along with the physical pain. Actually, he wanted to ask, "Mother, why is father not Xiaobao's biological father?" Even though he was still at such an ignorant age, even though he was currently in a coma due to illness. Xiaobao also instinctively knows that asking such a question will make Mayan sad. The best mother in the world. Xiaobao swore to protect his mother, so how could he say anything that would upset his mother? Mayan feels as if her throat is being choked by something. She looked at Xiaobao's sorrowful and aggrieved expression, and an unprecedented pain and hatred welled up in her heart. The man who had changed her fate for 2 lifetimes in the cave with a burning passion and madness. Even if she knew in her previous life that the child in her womb had been dug out and refined into a pill, she had never hated him. But at this moment, when she saw how stubbornly Xiaobao was enduring, she couldn't hold back her tears. Mu Yan's heart surged with uncontrollable resentment and hatred. The cave was dark and hot. At that time, she was just a mortal and couldn't see the man in front of her clearly. She couldn't even hear his voice. But that man could see her clearly. Even after 2 lifetimes, she could still remember the man's hoarse voice ringing in her ears over and over again. "You are mine." But in the blink of an eye, she wakes up from the dream, and she appears in the valley, her clothes disheveled. Chapter 35-65. There was no cave, no bone-piercing heat, and no strange, powerful man. Everything was like a real dream. The man appeared and disappeared. The promises they made in the past, the oaths and curses that rang in their ears over and over again, also vanished into thin air. He patted his butt and disappeared without a trace. But it left her with a scar that could never be healed in 2 lifetimes. Now, this scar had been passed on to her beloved son. Mu Yan took a deep breath, concealing the surging emotions in his heart and the hint of scarlet that leaked out from the corner of his eyes. She lowered her eyes and gently kissed the space between Xiaobao's eyebrows. She said in a soft voice, "Xiaobao, you are the person that mother loves most in this world." Xiaobao's gloomy and sad eyes lit up slightly. "You are mother's most important treasure. This has nothing to do with whose flesh and blood you are, or whose child you will become in the future." Xiaobao's long eyelashes fluttered. She couldn't help but reach out her small hand and pinch Mayan's finger. She clutched him tightly with her burning palms. If father doesn't want Xiaobao anymore, will Xiaobao still be mother's darling? Of course. Mu Yan gently caresses his little face, her voice so gentle that it could drip water. Xiaobao doesn't believe what Nyangqin said. Little Treasure hurriedly shook his head, then nodded lightly. His trembling body seemed to have calmed down. There's a trace of bashful happiness in the corners of his eyes. Xiaobao believes in Nyangqin. Mayan continued, "What's more, Daddy is so good to Xiaobao." What did it matter whether he was Xiaobao's biological father or not? What do other people say and comment have to do with us? As long as Xiaobao believes that Daddy loves you and that our family will be together forever, that's enough. Or could it be that Xiaobao believes in mother and doesn't believe in father? Xiaobao is so anxious that he squeezes Mayan's fingers a bit harder. Xiaobao believes in Daddy. But what was it? He just felt that his father loved his mother so much, almost to the bone. Just like Uncle Han Yi and the others said, in the future, Daddy and Nyangqin will get married, and Nyangqin will become the mistress of the polar domain. Then, mother and father may give birth to a child. A child who truly had his father's flesh and blood flowing in his veins, a child who had the qualifications to become the successor of the polar domain. Everything was wonderful, but he was the only one who was unnecessary. If he didn't exist, father and mother would definitely be happier. Mu Yan seems to have seen through Xiao Bao's thoughts. She gently caresses his forehead and softly says, "Xiao Bao, do you still remember what Daddy said to you at the top of Danyang Mountain?" On the peak of Danyang Mountain. Xiao Bao was stunned. His little head was dizzy from the fever, and for a moment, he couldn't remember where Danyang Mountain was. After a long while, he finally remembered. Danyang Mountain was near the Hellflame Valley of the Cultivation Continent. At that time, mother and father were originally going to tie the marriage contract. But who knew that there would be an unforeseen event and her father would leave in anger? At that time, Xiao Bao thought that his father was going to abandon him and his mother. In his heart, he felt that he and his mother were being betrayed. He was angry and sad at the same time. He even swore that he would never talk to his father again. Then, his father brought him to the peak of Danyang Mountain. What did he say to him? A scene from a long time ago appeared before his eyes. For the first time, the man who was always high and mighty, cold and aloof, the man whom she unconsciously worshipped, revealed a depressed and unconfident expression. He said, "It's not that Daddy doesn't want you and Nyangqin. Daddy is just afraid." The error-free chapter of Alluring Enchantress of the Cities, a heaven-defying baby's black-bellied father will continue to be updated on Handplay Bar. There are no advertisements on the site. Everyone, please collect and recommend Handplay Bar. If you like Alluring Enchantress of the Cities, a heaven-defying baby's black-bellied father, please collect. Chapter 3566. You were afraid that your mother would marry another man. I'm also afraid that Xiao Bao will think that it's better to let someone else be your father. Little Treasure opened his mouth slightly. He remembered everything. Mu Yan chuckled softly and said, "Xiao Bao believes in Nyangqin, but he isn't willing to completely believe in Daddy. Father might be afraid again. That would be too pitiful for your father, wouldn't it?" Xiao Bao's long eyelashes fluttered. The lack of confidence in his eyes suddenly vanished completely at this moment. He buries his head in Mayan's arms and gently rubs it. Father was afraid that Xiao Bao would think that someone else would be a better father. How could Daddy be so stupid? How could he be afraid of such a thing? In Xiao Bao's heart, there was no father better than his father. The corners of Xiao Xiao's lips curled up secretly. Recalling that memory, not only did Xiao Bao not feel aggrieved, but he also felt sad. On the contrary, it was as if he was carrying a small precious secret, and he couldn't help but feel happy. That was a father that no one else knew, only he and his mother knew. Mu Yan sees Xiao Bao's sparkling eyes and the smile at the corner of his mouth, and her tightened heart finally relaxes. She reaches out to pluck the Tian Mo Qin, softly saying, "Xiao Bao's current illness can only be overcome by relying on his own willpower. Xiao Bao has to get better quickly, don't let Daddy and Mommy worry, okay?" Xiao Bao nods, slowly closing his eyes amidst the sound of the Tian Mo Qin. As time passed, the black qi between his eyebrows and temples began to dissipate. Although the Shin musician's skill, mist-dispersing clouds, cannot protect the awakening of the bloodline, it can alleviate Xiao Bao's pain to a certain extent. As Mu Yan plays the zither, she lets out a long sigh of relief. But then, he couldn't help but look out of the window. The void spirit ring shone faintly. "Di Mingju, what are you doing? Why don't you come back to me in Xiao Bao?" In the Tian Mo Qin space. Because it had greedily eaten too much energy from a single spark making a prairie, the golden crow fire essence had been in a deep slumber. At this time, the energy was finally digested. He stretched and let out a comfortable sigh. He turned around and looked into the space. Ha! The hateful rabbit was not here, and neither was the black-hearted sword spirit. Only Little Phoenix and Little Chick were the easiest to bully. The golden crow's single eye rolled as it thought of the two little fellows who had followed the fat rabbit to bully it. It was immediately filled with rage. His chubbier body trembled. Casually shaking off the two flames, they flew towards Little Phoenix and Little Chick. Little Phoenix was very close. Seeing a round red object flying in front of him, he subconsciously opened his mouth wide and swallowed it. In an instant, a burning pain spread from her mouth to her abdomen, causing her to let out a blood-curdling scream. The little chick wasn't stupid enough to swallow it. Instead, it flapped its wings like it was chasing away a fly. However, this was like poking a hornet's nest. When the yellow wings came into contact with the sparks, they burst into flames. It hurts, it hurts. Woo woo woo. This was the little phoenix's aggrieved cry. Mom, big brother, save me. Fire. Mu Yen, who's in the middle of taking care of Xiao Bao, comes back to her senses. Seeing the scene that's happening inside the Tian Mo Chin space, she's startled. He hurriedly entered the space, picked up the little chick, and extinguished the flames on its body. Naturally, the fireball cast by the golden crow fire essence couldn't be easily extinguished. But there was a master-servant contract between Mu Yen and the golden crow. Chapter 3567. Naturally, it wasn't afraid of its flames. The fire on the little chick's body was extinguished. Mu Yen turned to look at the little phoenix. She watched as it opened its mouth, revealing its blistered throat. Mu Yen felt a wave of heartache. She gently rubbed the little phoenix's head to comfort it. As for treatment, there was no need. The little phoenix was of the fire attribute, and it was a rare fire spirit body. However, the level of the golden crow fire was much higher than it was at its infancy. That was why it was burned. But it would be fine after a while. Absorbing that ball of golden crow fire was actually beneficial to it. The little chick looked dazedly at its bare wings that had been burned. After a while, it started to cry. The cry was heart-wrenching, and anyone who heard it would cry. Even when Mu Yen hugged it and comforted it, letting it play in the amusement park as compensation, the little fellow didn't stop crying. Gee gee, burp, goo goo, burp. Woo woo, Huang Huang didn't have beautiful wings. It was no longer its mother's favorite chicken son. A bald chicken had no future. Huang Huang wouldn't be able to marry a beautiful chicken wife in the future. Woo woo, Huang Huang didn't want to live anymore. Even with Mu Yan's heart full of worry, she almost burst out laughing at this stupid chicken son. What fucking chicken wife? Was this really the young master of Wushang Palace? Was Huang Fuzun out of his mind? Did he mistake his stupid chicken for their young master? Huang Huang, who had been sobbing, seemed to suddenly think of something. With a shout, it suddenly charged at the golden crow. Ada! Guliulu! Beat you! Beat you! Bully Huang Huang bad guy! A strange cry accompanied the little chicken claw as it slapped at the golden crow's single eye. A trace of disdain flashed through the golden crow's eyes. The dead rabbit and black heart sword weren't here. You think this fire spirit is afraid of a stupid chicken. But the next moment, a chicken claw slammed into the golden crow's head, causing it to roll several times on the ground. Its single eye was full of mosquito coils. The little chick landed handsomely, even turning a circle. Then it showed a satisfied smile. Guji. Bad fire, bully Huang Huang. Bully Chio Chio. I'll beat you to death. Mayan picked up the smug little chick and slowly walked to the golden crow fire essence. Just as he was about to speak, his gaze suddenly focused on the golden crow's side. A piece of vermilion jade had unknowingly fallen there. Mu Yan felt that it was familiar at first glance, as if she had seen it somewhere before. She subconsciously walked forward and bent down to pick up the jade. The golden crow fire essence on the ground had just been beaten into a sorry state by the little chick, and it had lost all its face. She was throwing a tantrum. They had clearly teamed up with the dead rabbit and Blackheart's sword to bully it first. Why did Master have to side with these stinking bastards? Unfair. Unless its master fed it more pure fire energy, it wouldn't be satisfied. Just as he's fantasizing about how much fire energy he can extort this time, he catches a glimpse of Mu Yan picking up the vermilion jade from the corner of his eye. The single eye that was rolling around suddenly widened. Wait a minute. Wasn't that the jade he stole from the fat rabbit? Could it be that Master knew this piece of jade? Was its theft going to be exposed? Mu Yan stares blankly at the jade in her hand for a good while. She really felt that this piece of jade was very familiar. But for a while, she couldn't remember where she had seen it. Moreover, when she held the jade, Mu Yan had an indescribable feeling. It was like the blood and soul in her body would resonate with it. Chapter 3568. Ha! Qi Huang's curious voice sounded in his ear. Is this your demon blood core jade? When he got closer and took another look, he said suspiciously, that's not right. I don't sense your aura on it. But it seems to have some connection with you. Could it be that your parents left it for you? Mu Yan's eyes suddenly widened, an incredulous light bursting from the bottom of her eyes. She looked at Qi Huang in a daze. You said that my parents left this for me. Yeah. Demon core blood jade was something that could only be condensed by high-grade demons. It was not very useful, and was mainly used to find and identify bones and blood. This was because it was difficult for demons, especially high-level demons, to give birth. Hey! Jun Mayan, are you okay? Why do you look so pale? Qi Huang is halfway through his sentence when he discovers that Mayan's complexion is already deathly white like a sheet of paper. He jumps up in fright. He stretched out his hand to support her, but then he hesitantly withdrew it. However, there was an unconcealable worry in his eyes. What's going on? Is there a problem with this demon core blood jade? Mayan is silent for a good while, then she slowly says, do you still remember that I once said that when my father brought me back to the Yanwu continent and handed me over to my adoptive father to raise, there was only a tattered swaddling cloth on my body? Seven Brilliance nodded. He had also searched for the swaddling cloth with her. Mu Yan continues, but in fact, besides the swaddling clothes, I also have a piece of vermilion jade. It's just that this piece of vermilion jade was lost a long time ago, so I treated it as if it never existed. Qi Huang, that's the magic core blood jade. Isn't it a good thing that we found it? Mu Yan closes her eyes. After a long while, she says in a low voice, do you know where this piece of vermilion jade was lost? Just as Qi Huang was about to ask, where? He suddenly discovers that Mayan's lips are deathly pale, but her eyes seem to be burning with raging flames. It was pain, unwillingness, resentment, and blurred memories, but also a trace of hope. At this moment, the person in front of him was no longer the invincible Shen musician, the Lord of Liberty City revered by tens of thousands. She was just a weak, helpless girl. After a long time, Qi Huang heard her soft voice, as if it was about to be blown away by the wind. In the place where I was pregnant with Xiao Bao. Seven Brilliance's pupils shrank. In an instant, her beautiful black phoenix eyes seemed to be dyed with a bloodthirsty scarlet, but it quietly disappeared. Mu Yen turns around to look at the golden crow. She pinches the flow of the vermilion jade and dangles it upside down in front of its single eye. Word by word, he asked in a cold voice, "Where did you get this jade?" The golden crow shrank back instinctively. The whole fire was trembling. "It's over, it's over." Master is so scary. If it said that it came from the dead rabbit, would its master kill it? Even if he didn't kill it, he would definitely freeze it forever. Let it no longer feel warm. Weep, weep, weep. It doesn't want. The fat fireball swayed, and Jinwu carefully transmitted its consciousness to Mu Yen. This is what I picked up. I picked it up near Liberty City recently. That's right, I picked him up. The night was thick, and not a sound could be heard. In a private room on the west side of the mayor's residence of Liberty City, however, candles were still ablaze. Luo Yu yawned as she passed by and took a look inside. Seeing the easels and the strange paintings of mountains of corpses and seas of blood all over the room, she shuddered. She almost woke up from the drowsiness in her head. A few hundred years ago, the previous emperor of the polar domain happened to pick up a beautiful woman who had lost all her memories in the savage land of the Shushan continent. The flirtatious and affectionate Emperor Luo soon got his hands on this woman, and the two of them lived together for a few years. It's just that, the extreme domain's sovereign lord is an immortal venerate, just a step away from immortal emperor. He had lived for tens of millions of years, had the supreme status of the polar domain king, and had beautiful wives and concubines raised in the polar domain imperial court. But that woman was only a mortal without any cultivation. In a few short years, she grew old and lost her beauty, so she was abandoned. Li Weiran drank the tea in one gulp. His expression and tone were incomparably calm, as if he was narrating a story that had nothing to do with him. Chapter 3570. It's easy for an immortal reverend to abandon a mortal woman. And for a mortal woman to find her immortal husband, oh no, lover, that was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. She couldn't even enter the gates of the polar domain. 3 months after being abandoned, the woman found out she was pregnant. She was ecstatic, thinking that as long as she gave birth to the child, the polar domain emperor would definitely change his mind. However, the child she gave birth to was still a mortal who couldn't cultivate, a piece of trash. The polar domain emperor already had an outstanding son, a publicly recognized future successor. Sending such a trash son would only be humiliating himself. But the woman wasn't satisfied. She plotted and even sold her body to sneak into the polar domain imperial court. Then, she appeared in front of the emperor and excitedly told him, "Beixian, I am Qianqian, I brought our son to see you." Speaking of this scene, Li Weiran seemed to have said an interesting joke. The corner of his mouth curved up high, as if he was going to laugh out loud in the next moment. How could there be such a stupid woman in the world? Li Weiran seemed to be evaluating an unrelated outsider, with a teasing and careless tone. A mistress who couldn't see the light, a useless son who didn't have the slightest bit of value, came looking for her so eagerly. Did she really think that she could wait for the polar domain emperor's guilt and pity? How is that possible? What she waited for was mercilessly being chased out of the polar domain imperial court, and what she waited for was the cruel revenge of the polar domain divine empress. Then, she died. Before she died, she was still dreaming of a man changing his mind and bringing her back to the polar domain in glory. And her child, the boy who didn't have the slightest bit of talent for cultivation, was sold to the dirtiest place in the world. Chu Moli nodded. It was quite pitiful. So you are that boy. The Polar Domain Emperor is Instructor Mo's father, and the two of you are half-brothers. Brother. Li Weiran's voice suddenly rose. When he said that he was sold to the dirtiest place in the world, his face didn't change at all. But at this moment, his eyes shot out malicious hatred. No, how could he be my brother? Bai Xingwei died a long time ago, and Di Baixian went missing. He was the only one I could vent my hatred on. Only when I see Di Mingju lose everything with my own eyes, when he's in so much pain that he doesn't want to live, can I find relief. For so many years, I've always been thinking about how to destroy the polar domain, how to consign Di Mingju to eternal damnation. I've finally found a way. Chu Moli lightly clapped his hands and said with a faint smile, "Congratulations on getting your wish fulfilled. However, I'm still a little curious. With Instructor Mo's cultivation, how are you going to make him lose everything and suffer so much that he wishes he were dead?" Li Weiran's face had already regained its composure. He picks up the cup and gently takes a sip. I told him that I am Xiao Bao's biological father, and also Mayan's first man. Chu Moli stared blankly for a moment. A rare expression of astonishment appeared on his face. After a long while, he asked, "Instructor Mo believed me just like that?" Li Weiran slowly smiled. Of course he wouldn't believe it so easily. So I pointed him to a location and let him check it out himself. Chu Moli slightly narrowed his eyes. Junior sister came from the Yanwu continent, so your so-called location to investigate the truth must be there. Chapter 3571. This world's heavenly Tao rules work from top to bottom. The energy fluctuations decrease and cannot be reversed. Otherwise, there will be a backlash. Killing an emperor is an almost impossible task in the Shushan continent, but in the Yanwu continent, it's as easy as turning one's hand. Chu Moli pauses, then continues, "I'm afraid that Instructor Mo doesn't know about your scheme. But this matter involves little junior sister and Xiao Bao. Even if he knows that there's a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of him, he will still charge forward. Am I right?" This time, it's Li Weiran's turn to applaud. "You're absolutely right, truly worthy of being." The last few words come out of Li Weiran's mouth, but the meaningful smile on his face doesn't recede. "If I didn't know it was impossible, I would almost think that you've been watching me lay out my plans from the side. But there's one thing that I still don't understand." Chu Moli smiles and nods, indicating for him to ask. "Logically speaking, you're Jun Mayan's third senior brother, and you also called Di Mingju instructor. In terms of relationship, you should be closer to them. Why are you helping me?" Chu Moli's expression is unperturbed. He gently twirls the thumb ring on his hand and warmly says, "Back then, your mother Li Qianqian lost her memories and lost her cultivation. It was more or less related to me. Just think of it as me making up for the mistakes of that year." Li Weiran curls his lips, a faint smile on his face. "If I'm not wrong, Chu's third young master's age is only in his 20s, and there are no signs of reincarnation. My mother died hundreds of years ago. How is that related to you?" Chu Moli warmly says, "Does our cooperation include me telling you the truth?" "Of course not, I'm just casually asking." Li Weiran smiles faintly and hands a tattered wooden tablet to Chu Moli. "If Chu's third young master doesn't want to say it, then forget it. I will naturally complete the transaction that needs to be completed. I hope that Chu's third young master will also keep your promise and not forget what you promised me." "Of course." Chu Moli takes the wooden tablet and casually puts it away. He smiles and nods, "I will do as you wish." Once the door is closed, Chu Moli turns to look at his half-finished painting. The corners of his mouth curl up slightly. He picked up the brush and added color and lines to the painting. After a long while, he muttered as if he was talking to himself, "As you wish, junior sister is going to be sad." Mayan's mood has never been this anxious and fretful. It's been a day and a night since Di Mingju appeared and left. But there was still no news. What did Li Weiran tell him that day? Why did Di Mingju disappear without even the slightest explanation? Mu Yan really wants to go out and look for him, but Xiao Bao is still at the critical moment of life and death for his bloodline awakening. This was the third day of his awakening. According to the ancient books, as long as he could endure through today, he would be able to survive. The success rate of Xiao Bao's awakening would increase to 80%. Mu Yan's heart ached as she looked at Xiao Bao, who had his eyes tightly closed and a pained expression on his face. She wiped the sweat from his body with a cloth towel over and over again. She was so focused and pitiful that she didn't notice. In the yard outside her room, Chu Moli was currently throwing one painting after another at the corresponding positions of the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. The last painting fell to the northeast corner. Wisps of black gas suddenly seep out from the ground in the middle of the yard. As the black gas increases, the originally hard bluestone ground unexpectedly seems to have melted, and it starts to roll and ripple. Chapter 3572. Then, one head after another popped out from the center of the churning black water. Only after 10 people had emerged did the churning black water calm down. The black qi dissipated, and the ground returned to its original state of bluestone. The entire courtyard returned to its original state of tranquility. The first one to emerge was a haggard old man with long arms and legs. The teleportation just now made him look a little weak, and there was still a faint trace of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. However, he didn't even bother to wipe it. He immediately turned around and looked at Chu Moli. "May I ask where the person master wants us to take away is?" At this moment, Chu Moli's complexion is also indescribably pale. He slightly hangs his head, and points his finger in the direction of Mayan's room. Bang! The door was kicked open. Mu Yan looks up and sees the uninvited strangers. She frowns. "Who are you people?" The complexion of the long-limbed old man was much better now. He took a step forward, bowed slightly, and said respectfully, "I'm Tian Ho of the Longhand clan. I'm here to take you and the young master to the Shushan continent. Miss June, please come with us as soon as possible." Mayan stands up, her face full of vigilance as she looks at the few people, coldly saying, "What Darren? I don't know you." Tian Wu's wrinkled face twitched as he spat out 3 words, "Li Weiran. Li Weiran." Mu Yan's face darkens. "What if I don't go?" Tian Ho looked at her quietly, his expression still respectful. "His Excellency instructed us not to harm Miss June and the young master no matter what. But if you insist on resisting and not coming with us, we will also take special measures to make you lose the ability to resist first." Mayan raises her hand and the 7 Absolute sword appears in her palm. In her entire life, she had never been threatened by anyone. "In that case, let's see if you have the ability to make me lose the ability to resist." Even Tian Ho's expression changed when he saw the 7 Absolute swords. His eyes were filled with vigilance and suspicion. However, it was only for a moment before a smile appeared on his wrinkled face. "That's right, this old servant also remembered something. Lord Li asked me to tell you that if you don't come with us, I'm afraid you won't be able to see the Emperor one last time." "What did you say?" Mayan's face suddenly changes color as she thinks of Di Mingju, who she hasn't heard from. His heart felt like it was being roasted on fire. Could it be that Di Mingju is really in danger? Otherwise, why didn't he come back to see her for such a long time? However, even if her heart is on fire, Mayan's face only has a calm that no one can see through. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Li Weiran. You want to catch Di Mingju on your own. Isn't that too much of a daydream? Tian Ho wasn't angry at being ridiculed like this. Instead, he revealed a mysterious smile. It seems that Miss June is unwilling to obediently follow us. Miss June, please forgive us if we were to injure you. After all, Lord Li had repeatedly instructed us to respectfully invite you back. Mu Yan glanced at Xiao Bao behind her. She originally wanted to put him back into the space. However, he thought that if he were to get injured in the fight later, it might affect him. Thus, he threw out a formation plate to protect Xiao Bao. Swish 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 swish. The 7 child swords fly out and float behind Mayan. The Tian Mo Qin flips over and floats to the left. Her fair fingers lightly pluck the strings, producing a melodious zither sound. Chapter 3573. She's clearly just a young girl in her early 20s. And her cultivation hasn't even reached the peak of golden immortal. But looking at the 7 transparent swords that emit different rays of light. Listening to the sound of the zither echoing in the room. Tian Ho and the others have an inexplicable feeling of being suppressed in their hearts. His eyes sink, and he slowly takes a step forward. Miss June, you don't know what's good for you, it's really difficult for me. A powerful pressure is suddenly released, making Mu Yan's face turn white. Her internal organs tumble, and she almost spits out blood. The Tian Mo Qin makes a series of chaotic sounds under this pressure. It can no longer assist as effectively as before. At this moment, Mu Yan feels that she's an ant poured by Tian Ho. In the face of absolute power and level suppression, there's no trace of resistance. The arms of the long-handed clan are more than twice as long as those of ordinary people. Tian Ho doesn't do anything. He just slowly reaches out and grabs Mu Yan. The 7 absolute swords fly out to resist. But they're slapped down the moment they touch the long hand. The withered palm is about to cover Mu Yan's palm. Suddenly, bang! Tian Ho feels a sharp pain in his back, followed by a bone-chilling energy pouring into his body. Puff! He violently spits out a mouthful of blood, trying to operate his immortal force to stabilize his turbulent internal breath. But he feels a burst of tearing pain in his internal organs. And a black line begins to appear on the withered palm. It spreads all the way up his arm, and in just a few breaths, it's already close to his heart. Miss June, are you all right? Mu Yan hasn't reacted to what's happening. She sees a kind old man respectfully saluting her, confirming that she's safe and sound. Only then does he let out a long sigh of relief. Mu Yan is confused. May I ask who you are? I'm Chang'ing, an elder of the polar domain. Elder Chang's eyes are gentle, looking up and down at Mu Yan. The admiration and intimacy in his eyes are overflowing. I've heard Jun Shang and the little master mention you, and today I'm finally fortunate to see you in person. Chang'ing, why are you here? Mu Yan hasn't had time to digest these twists and turns and Elder Chang's identity when she hears Tian Ho's incredulous roar behind her. Elder Chang turns to look at him and says unhappily, if you can come, why can't we? If I don't come, could it be that I'll let you take away my polar domain's honorable divine empress? As he spoke, Tian Ho's subordinates had all fallen to the ground, unconscious. Moreover, their faces were covered in black qi, and their lips were purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. Tian Ho's face twisted fiercely. That's impossible. If you came to the floating island through the universe mirror, there's no way we wouldn't know. Elder Chang stroked his beard and sneered, "Who said we came through the mirror of heaven and earth? Then how did you come to the floating island unharmed?" Tianho's questioning voice suddenly paused. His horrified gaze slowly turned to the door. There, Chu Moli, who had a pale complexion and a gentle expression, resembling a weak scholar, was currently being pushed by Qinzhou into the room. Tianho's eyes widened. "It's you. You used the 10,000 will curse to teleport them here." "Why?" Chu Moli calmly said, "It's not easy for me to set up the 10,000 wheels curse. Wouldn't it be a loss if I only used it to transport the few of you? Are you crazy?" Tianho's voice suddenly rose, his eyes filled with intense hatred and anger. Chapter 3574. The polar domain hates people who use curse the most. No, the entire Shushan continent will not allow people who use curse to exist. You exposed your identity as a curse warrior, yet you still rely on the polar domain. Aren't you courting death? How could that be? Chu Moli smiles faintly. "Don't you know that the polar domain's sovereign is my Xiaoyao sect son-in-law? I have such a thick golden thigh to hug, what's there to worry about?" Pft, cough, cough, cough. Elder Chang almost chokes to death on his own saliva. Son-in-law, what the hell? Their Jun Shang is the dignified polar domain sovereign. How could he marry into the Xiaoyao sect? Don't even think about it. Even Mu Yen can't help but facepalm. She actually doesn't understand what her third brother is doing. How could Li Weiran's subordinates get involved with third brother? But there's one thing she's sure of. In this world, she hasn't met a more abnormal, more black-bellied, more calculating person than third brother. Tianho takes a deep breath, slowly calming down. He glances at the black line on his body that's about to reach his heart. He can't help but reveal a bitter smile. It turned out to be the soul-snatching soul, refined by the sacred ancestor Medicine King. No wonder I didn't even have the chance to use the curse. But do you think you've won just like that? Tianho suddenly laughs faintly, his expression malevolent and deranged. Do you really think that Di Mingju can still come back from the Yanwu continent alive? No, he won't survive. Everything that happened today, Li Daren has already calculated it for hundreds of years. In the Yanwu continent, every game, every step, is a killing move to put Di Mingju to death. Even if he knew beforehand, so what? He still can't escape the fate of certain death. As soon as his voice falls, the black line on Tianho's body finally spreads to his heart. There's a loud bang, and he screams, falling stiffly to the ground. His round eyes don't have much fear and pain from dying in peace, only crazed hatred. The world is filthy, the sins of generations. There will be a day when a raging flame will burn everything in the world, letting everything return to ashes, earth to earth. Everyone will pay for their sins. Ha ha ha. No one can escape, no one. Ha ha ha. A ball of blue flame sprang up from his heart, instantly burning his 3 souls and 7 mortal forms into nothingness. The culprit has been executed, but there's no way for Mayan to feel at ease. Did he just say that Di Mingju is in the Yanwu continent? What's going on? Elder Chang is also deeply worried, but when he hears Mayan's question, he still squeezes out a smile. Miss June, don't worry. With Jun Shang's cultivation and strength, as well as the fact that he has already taken precautions, nothing will happen. Mayan frowns. I ask you, what is he doing in the Yanwu continent? Chapter 3575. No, she will never know. Xiao Bao's biological father is already dead. She only needs to remember this. In that case, Mayan could only be his wife. I will never leave. Elder Chang's heart skipped a beat. He knows that Di Mingju is determined to kill Xiao Bao's biological father. He wanted to stop her, but in the end, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. What kind of days did Jun Shang lead as a child? Later on, he was so cold-hearted that he bound himself in an ice-cold shell, not allowing himself to have any feelings. Elder Chang had been watching them along the way. Jun Shang has finally found his own happiness and is living more and more like a normal person. How could he bear to let others destroy it? But now that Mayan has asked, Elder Chang is flustered. What was he supposed to say? Is Di Mingju going to kill your child's biological father? With this thought in mind, Elder Chang turned his gaze to Xiao Bao, who was lying on the bed with a high fever and sleeping. What happened to little master? You seem to be in a lot of pain. As he spoke, he hurriedly walked towards the bed. Half of it is because she's really worried, and the other half is because she wants to change the topic, so that Mayan won't ask about Di Mingju's whereabouts again. However, just as he walked to the bedside, his divine sense probed Xiaobao's body, and his eyes suddenly widened. Li Fire Bloodline Awakening. How is this possible? In the polar domain, Elder Chang's qualifications were very high, but his strength could only be considered average. This time, the reason why Di Mingju ordered him to come and protect Mu Yan and Xiao Bao. Most importantly, he has the divine spirit tranquilizer pill that Han Chujiu gave him. Li Weiran, as well as the mysterious organization that Mu Luyun was in, were all experts in using poison and curses. On the floating island, a place where the heavenly Tao's laws couldn't completely protect. These despicable methods can unleash a power that is 100 times stronger than that of the Shushan continent. Even if Ing Mei and Han Ye's cultivation is higher than Elder Chang's, in the face of these curse, they still don't have the power to resist. On the other hand, Elder Chang's spiritual mind suppression pill could resist the power of the curse to a certain extent. As for ordinary poisons, they would be completely immune to the spiritual mind suppressing pill. However, Elder Chang would never have expected this. It was a freak coincidence that he came to the floating island this time. Li Fire Bloodline. Even in the polar domain's royal family, only the direct descendants of the Mahists could inherit this bloodline. Not to mention the possibility of awakening after receiving the inheritance. Therefore, in the entire polar domain, the only person who truly knew what the symptoms of the Leaf Fire bloodline awakening were, and what kind of energy fluctuations there were, was Elder Chang. Even Di Mingju, he has awakened the Leaf Fire bloodline. But at that time, Jun Shang was still too young. And because there was no one to look after him, he suffered a lot. However, he remained unconscious and unable to wake up. In fact, he had no idea what was going on with the bloodline awakening. However, Elder Chang knew very well. He could confirm it almost as soon as he saw Xiao Bao. He was experiencing the awakening of his Leaf Fire bloodline. Hearing Elder Chang's words, Mayan doesn't have the time to ask about Di Mingju's condition. She suddenly widens her eyes. She grabbed Elder Chang's hand and suppressed her excitement. Elder Chang, you know about the Leaf Fire bloodline. Chapter 3576. Glorious Sun Swallowing Heaven, Leaf Fire 9 Luminaries. Only with the Leaf Fire bloodline could there be a glorious sun swallowing heaven. This was publicly acknowledged under the heavens that only the polar domain's imperial family could possess this bloodline. The little master is clearly not Jun Shang's biological son. How could he have inherited the Leaf Fire bloodline that only the direct descendants of the Mo clan had? Elder Chang felt that his mind was in a mess. Thousands of strands of thoughts were tangled into one ball after another. There were many details and coincidences that he had never paid attention to before. At this moment, they appeared in front of him one after another. This blood knot totem was something that was extremely difficult to succeed with, but Jun Shang and the Little Master succeeded in one try. There aren't many people in the three realms who have ice blue pupils, but Jun Shang and the Little Master have a pair of eyes that are almost exactly the same. Also, when the Little Master and Jun Shang appeared together in the hidden abyss, almost no one doubted that the Little Master and Jun Shang weren't biological father and son. Elder Chang had never cared about all of this in the past. But at this moment, if one were to think about it, they would all point to the same conclusion. But, how could this be possible? Jun Shang has clearly never been to the Yanwu continent before, nor has he mentioned having skin contact with any woman. With Jun Shang's infatuation with Miss June, if he had known earlier that the two of them had a child, it was good enough that he didn't tie her up to get married. How could he have left them behind for so many years and not cared about them? No, that's impossible. Elder Chang shook his head vigorously in fear. But if it wasn't Jun Shang, then who could it be? Could it be that there was a second person in the world who had inherited the Leaf Fire bloodline? Elder Chang, Elder Chang. When Mu Yan saw that Elder Chang was in a daze, as if he had lost his soul and was staring fixedly at Xiao Bao, she couldn't help but panic in her heart. Is Xiao Bao in danger? Is the Leaf Fire bloodline really unable to endure it alone? No, how could that be? That year, you. Halfway through his sentence, Elder Chang quickly shut his mouth. Things were not clear yet, so he could not speak carelessly. Elder Chang took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry, Miss June Little Master's condition is very good now. It's not like the Leaf Fire bloodline can't withstand it alone. With Little Master's willpower and talent, the first awakening shouldn't be a problem." Hearing Elder Chang's words, Mu Yan breathed a sigh of relief. It was fine as long as he could get through it. If something really happens to Xiao Bao, Mu Yan doesn't know what she will do. Perhaps she would search to the ends of the earth to find the man who had brought Xiao Bao into the world and made him suffer for 2 lifetimes. He would chop him into pieces and bury him with Xiao Bao. That, Miss June, Elder Chang asked cautiously, "May I ask, who exactly is Xiao Bao's biological father?" He paused and then said with difficulty, "This old man heard Jun Shang say that you loved Xiao Bao's father very much. It's just that he died young, causing you two to be separated by life and death. You still miss him, don't you?" Mu Yan rubbed her forehead, feeling speechless. What the fuck? Back then, he had told a lie, and now, it was like a rolling snowball, getting bigger and bigger. Originally, she wanted to personally tell Di Mingju about this matter. But he didn't know why he couldn't say it out loud every time. Mu Yan hesitated for a while before saying softly, "Elder Chang, to tell you the truth, I don't know who Xiao Bao's biological father is." What? Elder Chang's eyes widened in shock. "Kiki, didn't you tell Jun Shang that you loved Xiao Bao's biological father very much?" Chapter 3577. Mayan touches her nose, awkwardly saying, "At first, I thought that Di Mingju was annoying, so I deliberately said that, wanting him to know when to retreat." Who knew? Who knew, that man? He was clearly the Polar Domain's sovereign emperor, a king who stood at the peak of all living beings. However, he was unswerving in love with her, a broken flower whose heart belonged to someone else. In the end, she chose to face her heart and stay with him for a long time. However, this lie from back then had missed the best time to explain itself. Whenever Mu Yan recalls Di Mingju's jealous appearance, she can't help but find it funny. She smiles helplessly. Her line of sight seems to be looking at that man in a faraway world. Actually, I've wanted to tell him for a long time. There's only one man that Mayan has ever loved in this life, and that's Di Mingju. I don't have a dead husband, and I don't have anyone I love more than anyone else, because from the beginning to the end, I only love him. Mr. Chang blinked his eyes in a daze. You don't know who Xiaobao's biological father is. What's going on? Mayan restrains the gentleness and smile on her face, and her expression turns ice-cold in a split second. She didn't want to talk about the past, but she was afraid that Elder Chang would misunderstand, so she gave a simple explanation. I was young then, and I was tricked into a nameless valley. I was drugged, and in a daze, I entered a cave. The cave was dark. I couldn't see the man's face clearly, and I couldn't remember what had happened during that time. After I left the cave, I discovered that I was pregnant with Xiao Bao. In the cave, the man whose face could not be seen clearly had passed on the Leaf Fire bloodline to Little Mistress. At this moment, Elder Chang's mind was a mess, and he felt as if hundreds of claws were scratching at his heart. He feels that he must see Jun Shang immediately and tell him about this matter. As for that cave, he had to investigate it thoroughly. Mr. Chang suppressed his excitement and nervousness and asked, Miss Jun, don't you want to find out who the father of the young master is? Mayan says with an expressionless face, I originally didn't want to. I was afraid that if I saw someone, I wouldn't be able to stop myself from castrating him. After all, he's Xiaobao's biological father. It won't be good if he finds out when he grows up. Elder Chang shuddered and suddenly felt a cold pain in a certain part of his body. Oh, I feel sorry for Jun Shang. But now that little Bao's Leaf Fire bloodline has awakened, if he has the protection of an elder, perhaps he won't have to work so hard. Mu Yan looked at Elder Chang. If possible, could you ask the Polar Domain to help me investigate the people who possess the Leaf Fire bloodline? Elder Chang wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Yes. Of course you can. The Polar Domain will not shirk its duty. Mu Yan feels that Elder Chang's expression is a little unsightly. She was about to express her concern. Suddenly, the void spirit ring on his finger shone with a dazzling light. Immediately after, Mu Yan feels as if all the strength in her body has been sucked out. Her legs went soft, and she sat down on the bed. What's going on? 7 Brilliance cried out from within the space. Why are your life force and soul primordial energy flowing away? Jun Mayan, quickly take off the ring on your finger. Impossible. Mu Yan's face was deathly pale, but his fingers were tightly gripping the ring on his ring finger, as if he wanted to embed it into his own flesh and blood. Miss Jun, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale? The void spirit ring stopped drawing soul power from her body. It's like someone had forcibly cut off that connection. The error-free chapter of Alluring Enchantress of the Magic Doctor, Heaven-Defying Baby's Black-Bellied Father will continue to be updated on Handplay Bar. There are no advertisements on the site. Everyone, please collect and recommend Handplay Bar. If you like Alluring Enchantress of the Magic Doctor, Heaven-Defying Baby's Black-Bellied Father, please collect. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.